What is up, folks? Justin Khanna here. This is a very, very exciting project for me. A few weeks ago, I had this gentleman, Amit, send me an email, a cold email at that. And the gist of it is that he's a computer science professor at Princeton. He did his PhD at Stanford. He's a Seattle native. He's living in New York. And through the power of the internet, he found my stuff. And so it just happened to jive with his own personal interests. And in reaching out, he was hoping to conduct a, quote, short video / phone call, end quote, which ultimately turned into an hour-and-a-half Google Hangout between him and I. And I said yes to the interview on the condition that I could record it and then share it with you folks. But in keeping with the staying platform specific, I've decided to experiment with how I'm going to distribute this. So this right here is ultimately episode 77 of the Emulsion podcast. It's up now. You can download the entire thing right now and listen wherever podcasts are available, even Spotify. Just so you know, for everyone that's not caught up on that, the Emulsion podcast is on Spotify. Shout out to you if you're listening to this as a podcast episode. But I've edited this interview into 7 individual videos, and this is the first of those videos, ultimately making a week's worth of uploads. Everything is scheduled to upload at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every single day, starting today. So you can essentially look forward to daily uploads from this channel. And this will make its way into a playlist at the end of the whole thing. So if you've stumbled upon this video more than 7 days after today, you can binge the entire thing. And that will be available through a link in the description or as an end card at the end of this video, depending on what your preference is. All right, that's my intro on this little content experiment. I do apologize for a few bits and bobs throughout the interview. Google Hangouts cut me out audio-wise and video-wise a couple times. So I did my best to edit it in a way that makes sense, but I think that the context clues speak for themselves. They don't leave anything that left out. Also, if you want to get in touch with Amit, his stuff is linked up down below or in the show notes. So enjoy.
My partner and I were kind of living the New York lifestyle as young professionals, eating out a lot of trash. Our go-to for years was this taco place across the street from us, which shout out to Dorado Tacos, but not necessarily the most definitely not the most healthy to eat every day, and then also not the most kind of varied or cost efficient or satisfying to just have. And we both love cooking, and we both kind of love the creativity and satisfaction from sort of making food for ourselves and eating it. But there is just this sort of push and pull of you never really find the time to dig into 3 hours of kind of making something. Definitely not every day. And so the push this summer for me has been kind of figuring out how to cook for the week, basically.
Sure.
And what was kind of a bummer at first. So the first thing I did is I asked my mom what she did. Because she cooked growing up, and my parents were both they both worked, so it was a similar sort of dynamic. And the answer there was, she had 6 dishes that she made for 30 years.
Right.
And she took a whole Sunday, 6 or 7 hours or something, and just did that. And that is not going to work for me.
Totally.
not right now.
Need some more variety.
Exactly. So being an engineer, what I ended up doing is not practicing the recipe as much as thinking about kind of this problem in general, and really trying to learn more about how professionals cook. I mean, if you're doing a seating for 30 people, you might spend the whole day doing it, but that's a lot of food.
Sure.
And you talk a lot about systems, so that's something that I want to dig in with you. But that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And so for me, the kind of the high level project is I'm kind of interested in figuring out, how to think about this from a systems perspective. That also happens to be kind of my field of research in computer sciences systems.
Totally.
I can kind of dig into the details, but for me, it turns out that I think that there's a real correspondence between how we think of kind of executing a bunch of different kind of workloads on a computer, and how we might think of sort of executing a bunch of different dishes or recipes or whatever on this system that is our kitchen.
Correct.
And ourselves and so forth. So that's kind of that's kind of the broad perspective that I'm coming from, and I have like, my directions that I'm going in, but it's pretty uninformed still.
Can I ask one more question before we get into
Absolutely.
your questions? How did you find my stuff?
So I'm a nerd. So whenever I get into something, I like get into it. We've had this Vitronox knife for like 4 years or something, which is fine, but not like the most kind of fun thing to fun tool to do. So I was like looking through like, what knife should I buy? I think I found one of your knife review videos.
Sure.
And then I just I just went on like a binge.
Yeah.
Like a 40-minute binge of like, and then I think I really got drawn in again because of it was like one of the first times I've seen a chef sort of share stuff about cooking that wasn't like, here's knife skills and like, here's how you julienne, which is great too. I mean, I've learned a lot from that. I learned how to cook an egg from Gordon Ramsay or whatever.
Totally.
But you sort of give more of what I think of as sort of a behind the scenes of how what you talk about, sort of all the sort of systems and execution behind just the specific skills. Which to me was really fascinating.
Well, because the ultimate goal, and I think the pinnacle of it, would be if the whole thing runs like a machine. But the reality of it is that you have human beings doing all of these jobs. So you have to like find that balance between what does a human being need to work, even though at a very basic level, in a perfect world, it would all work like a well-oiled machine. And so much of what I'm going to share with you today is about like the assembly line mentality with a restaurant and how a lot of the times it doesn't really translate very well to the home cook environment. So I don't know. You sent me a couple of questions prior. Is there a place you want to start, or like one that you're most curious about? Or
I have a bunch. We can play this either way. I'm either happy for you to lead it with kind of the questions that I sent, and then I padded those with others. But it's mostly it's all along the same line. So I can whichever you prefer. If you have a bunch that you want to say.
Well, I took a couple of notes, but with number one, is there any other details you wanted to? So you asked what would be the main difference between prepping and cooking for a 30-person seating and then cooking 30 meals for a week. Basically, is there a lot of knowledge transfer between restaurant cooking and meal prep cooking? So for me, the first piece of notes that I wrote down was assembly line versus one-time execution, right? If you're prepping for a 30-person seating, yes, it has some differences, but if you're working for like a restaurant and you have a full service, that's a very different execution, because you're thinking about from 5 p.m. until 10 p.m. I'm going to have to pick up this dish from start to finish. So the way that you organize yourself is going to be different than if you're doing a big 30-person seating where all the food is going to be like prepared and then served at the same time. But you're doing something very similar where like you're preparing it all and then you're planning on staggering the eventual preparation for it. So little things like if you're going to be doing chicken legs, like chicken thighs, it's very easy to, instead of like sear and then braise and then warm up in the microwave, you could take like a whole big pan or a pot, put all the chicken legs in there with whatever aromatics you want, braise it, and then as you are ready to serve it, you could get color on each individual chicken leg. That's something I did for a party the other day. And that's like principles from sous vide that kind of carry over, where they do the reverse sear or whatever they call it, where it's like you pull it out of the water bath and it's this gray piece of meat that looks kind of gross. But then once you get some color on it and show it some love with like some butter or some aromatics, then it's essentially a perfectly cooked piece of protein with color on it. So that would be my first kind of hack. And restaurants are notoriously good at doing the assembly line process, where each station is responsible for a different element and it all has to come together at the same time. I don't think you need to stress a lot about worrying about those individual nuances, because you're not going it's irrelevant details for you. So thinking about Yeah, keep going.
If I could just interrupt. So one thing I am hearing about that though is, which I think sounds really interesting, is how in the example you gave, kind of the way that you're planning on sort of serving out the meals and like and sort of how you need to execute on it sort of feeds back into how you think about like how I should prepare this. So
Correct.
in some sense, like the recipes or whatever are sort of informed by not just this is like the perfect way to cook a chicken, but like this is a way that's going to allow me to execute on this efficiently.
Totally. And I mean, even some of those problems that you brought up in the beginning about like cost, like some of the tastiest dishes in the world are based on these peasant ideologies with cheap cuts of meat and what have you. So would I advise you to mass prep chicken breast? Probably not, because chicken breast is best served like juicy and in the moment, and not really, it doesn't really reheat very well. But doing duck legs and chicken legs and like brisket, like beef brisket and pork belly, that all is amazing when you slow cook it for a while, you cool down the entire batch in a way that's safe, and then reheat. It makes so much more sense. You're going to save money, and it's probably going to be tastier because if you are ready and willing to put in the time for you and your partner to get everything like ready to go, that reheating process is going to be great. Another tip that I wanted to share with you is this restaurant idea that I picked up a long time ago called making kits, like a KIT. And that comes from the idea of, so my girlfriend and I do it with overnight oats. She likes overnight oats sometimes for breakfast. And so instead of every, 4 nights a week, getting all my little deli containers, getting a deli container out, scooping the oatmeal in, scooping protein powder and chia seeds and a little bit of salt in one container, I'll line up, 10 and then do oats. And that's more of like an assembly line restaurant thing that actually works. And I mean, I would do it in my restaurant jobs with like tempura batter, or when you're making bread, you do all the dry ingredients together and you like label it in your cupboard that it says bread kit or something like that. And then, I mean, it's how Betty Crocker that's the business model, right? Is like measure out all the dry ingredients so that they're ready to go. And I mean, you can do that if you and your partner decide that like we really like rice that has dehydrated lemon zest and cracked green peppercorn in it. You know what I mean? You can make individual kits that are ready to go that have all these dry ingredients in them, and then it says needs 1.5 cups of water on it. You know what I mean? And then, when you have that chicken that you just seared, you have your kit ready to go, and that's like 2 portions plus a little bit of leftovers for lunch tomorrow. Because you seem like the kind of guy that would want to prep like that. But yeah, I don't think it's very important to cherry pick those restaurant tips, because it's very easy for you to get overwhelmed with like, I need to completely replicate a restaurant's process. But I mean, I think your head's in the right place where I don't think you're going to do that. But I can see where it would be easy to get in that trap of I need to prep everything and then cool everything down and then like tray everything up and then bring it all together at one time and kind of plate it. Doesn't always work the best with home cooking, because you're going to end up with way more dishes than you want, and you're going to spend way too much time doing these irrelevant tasks, I guess. And why did I write that down? I wrote down home cook versus line cook. A line cook is a cog in a machine. Right. They are put there for a very specific reason, to do a very specific set of tasks that overall elevate the menu and make it possible for the menu to exist. With a home cook, you're responsible for everything, unless you two are cooking together, which in any case, I mean, I don't know do you guys divvy up the work at all, or do you prefer cooking meat, or she likes cutting vegetables? Like what?
I mean, now that you've been to a New York kitchen, like there's no room for two people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's also the huge problem.
Yeah.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that video. The next one is linked up right here for your convenience as part of the playlist. If you like content like this, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on any new videos. And most importantly, I'm known for publishing my own takeaways as part of most of the interviews that I do, but because I did so much blabbing in this interview itself, I would like to know what your takeaways are. Please let me know down low in the comments. Get some color on that like button, and I'll see you in the next video. My name's Justin Khanna. Have a good one.